What's going on, everyone? My name is Nicholas Merton here at Data Dash, and today is May 11th of 2020. Well, folks, I hope you all are having a fantastic day wherever you are, because today we are living through a historic period of time for cryptocurrencies. In just a couple of hours, we are going to go through an event that happens every 4 years throughout Bitcoin's history, and that is the Bitcoin halving event. Now, I want to go ahead and re-review some of the topics that we've talked about in the past, as well as adding some new things that I'm looking at in regards to price as we're trying to guesstimate what kind of effect this is going to have on the market. But outside of that as well, I just want to talk to you guys about the plans I have for the live stream later today and some details about how we're going to go about preparing for the halving event. All right, so we've got a lot of things to talk about in this video. I highly recommend you stay tuned for it right after our quick sponsor. Our sponsor for today's episode is Bitpanda Pro. Bitpanda Pro is the secure European exchange for crypto to fiat markets. Bitpanda has been offering secure, straightforward, and easy access to the cryptocurrency market in Europe for over 5 years and wants to offer the same service to more experienced traders, users using trading bots, and other advanced clients like cryptocurrency businesses and institutional investors. With the steady addition of more and more crypto to fiat trading pairs, Bitpanda Pro has made itself a convenient, secure, and trustworthy exchange to onboard or cash out easily. Check out the link down below in the description to learn more. Alrighty, everyone, so let's go ahead and start by just taking a look across the board on the market real quick. As we can see in the last 24 hours, the vast majority of cryptocurrencies are in a no trend scenario right now, between 1 to 2% to the upside or downside, or at 0%. However, Bitcoin is starting to pick up a little bit of steam here. If you take a look here over that the 24-hour period, it wouldn't become very apparent if you just looked at CoinMarketCap, but if you take a look here on the last couple of minutes, we can start to see that we've gotten a nice bounce up from around 8,400 upward towards 8,900, hitting recently just a couple minutes ago at 9,000. Now, I don't want to take a look at the 5-minute chart or the hourly, and I barely just want to take a look at the daily here. What I really want to look at is the weekly amount, which I think will make the topic that I want to talk about very clear. But let's just go ahead first and focus on price here and what we can gather from price. So over the last 3 days before today, we had a pretty stark sell-off from about 10,000 downward to a low of around 8,100. We had a full 20% correction nearly in price over the course of 3 days, most of it coming in here on the third day at a total down day for about 8.54%. Now, taking this into account, a lot of people thought, this is the standard top here for the halving. This basically topped it exactly where we've had this line drawn for quite some time. I'll go ahead and put it here on the weekly just to make it a little more prevalent, right? We've had this drawn for a while because this is taking into account the last 2 points of resistance for Bitcoin, as we've been also keeping into mind the level of support here. And we've started to see how we've been formulating a wedge here on the longer term trend. And this makes sense. This is a pattern usually that can be set up over long periods of time for much longer term cycles. And I think that's what we're seeing here. Now, as much as I've had the idea that we're going to hit resistance here, pull back down to 6 or 7K, hold at a higher level of support that doesn't touch this line, we may see something even more bullish, guys. We may see something that's even more optimistic, because some people think that this is going down below the line of resistance. It's going to break down to $3,000, that this is going to push sideways for 2 more years. And then there's also the possibility here of not only what I talked about here, where we could go to 6 or 7K, but I've started to contemplate the idea that we actually might start to come up here and hit a new line of resistance here, taking into account a few of the previous lines of the previous points of resistance here, as we can see over here in October, we can see here in February, and also a lot of the contingent points of resistance in the past, and also support. I noticed this the other day in the sense of the kind of trend line here of the consistencies of where support and resistance align with one another. And what we might see here as we go to the halving event is quite a shock to some people. Usually we do see a pullback in price. At least that's what we saw in the last halving event. However, what we might see is prices rallying through with optimism, going up here towards 11,000, hitting resistance on this line, and breaking out of the long-term wedge. Now, why do I talk about this kind of theory here? How price could basically continue through, and along with that, eventually get up and make this line resistance support. Why would that be significant and important, and where have we seen that in other markets? The reason it would be significant, I'll answer that question first, is because by being able to get above that line of resistance and therefore make it support afterwards, coming back, pulling back in price, and holding along this multiple times, it solidifies that we've had an outward break to the upside of the wedge. This is a bullish sign. It signals in price that bulls are no longer waiting for Bitcoin to dip below, in this case, what was previous resistance, it is now new support. And this means that price can start to make higher levels, right? So this is a really optimistic sign. But for a point of context, just to understand where we've seen this before in a similar asset, take a look no further at gold. So gold, for example, I was watching gold for a very long period of time. We'll jump off the logarithmic chart here. We can see here that gold had a relatively consistent line of resistance, actually very similar to Bitcoin, where you had two significant tops here in this case, and then it took a very long period of time to see a test of those tops in regards to its price, right? And what we could start to see here is gold was starting to prepare for the next cycle, hit resistance again, came down on the line of support multiple times, and then eventually we got above that line of resistance, had multiple weeks of support, as you can see here, a few different tests near the line, and then we started to have a massive breakout, right? And this really formulated gold's next uptrend. Taking a look at the monthly here, right, we can turn off our drawings. No one can doubt this is an uptrend here. And if you're looking at other fiat currencies across the world outside of gold to the dollar, we're at new all-time highs for gold in this case. So again, just keeping that in mind and stuff, I think it's very important to take a look at other types of assets like gold. And going back to Bitcoin, I think that it's a very real possibility that we could see that, right? Again, as we start to kind of cut price here and start to go upward again, we very well could see this. Again, taking a look at the weekly or the monthly, it doesn't really matter. This looks like it's got a lot of confidence behind it. And the volume is coming back quite strong compared to what we saw back here through December to February, right? So it's very interesting to see this. But all in all, there's a few other things we want to talk about. That is just a possibility. It's one thing I wanted to share with you guys because I haven't really seen many people talking about that. There's a few things we want to talk about going into the halving event. A few reasons why we still remain optimistic in this case. Again, even if Bitcoin goes down to $7,000, that still leaves me optimistic because again, my time frame is not looking at what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. I'm looking for the next 2 to 3 years in this case. I want to see where the cycle is going to take Bitcoin. And again, my theory in this case is that we're going to see a minimum of 100K by November of 2022. Okay, we could go higher than that. You know, right? We could be off by a few points and maybe only go down to 90,000. Go up to $90,000. Who knows, right? That's a complete guessing game at this point. But I want to go ahead and review a few things. I want to take a look at the halving. Taking a look at probably the most important model here in regards to the halving event, which is the stock to flow. We jump back here to a time period where we had the last halving event. Came down to fair value here, pretty much right into the halving event, right? Not too far off. And look where we are now, right? Just a couple of months ago, we were very distant from the halving, where we should be for the halving event, right? Down here around $5,000. Really, if we got the actual figures, we were down around like 3,000 for a good part of it, so dipping very low. Well, we came back up to this period of time, and now we're nearly at fair value. Exactly where we should be. Markets are efficient in this case, right? Now, again, the one thing I want to talk about, again, as people start to realize, for the people who do understand the halving event, there are some people who will buy into it, get us up to this range. But the point that I always try to bring up in the sense of people, when they talk about pricing in the halving model, which we are going to revisit here and I want to talk about, a lot of people are like, if the halving is the halving's already priced in, Nick. And when people usually say that, they're usually talking about Bitcoin being like, 20,000, 100,000 should be already there. If the halving is already well known, then we should be at the next target for the halving model, which would take us up here to returns around $90,000. And sadly, that's just not true. The reason why can be reflected from the last halving event. And it's because the vast majority of the world doesn't know about Bitcoin. It doesn't know about the halving event. So what you end up here with, right, is a general market of buyers. Here you have some people, might have a little bit of an influx of buyers as of recent, maybe up to $13 or $15 million worth of buy-side activity compared to this example, 11.2 million. And the reason for that is some people might be learning about the halving model. Yes, no doubt there are some people who are going to buy, and that's probably why we've seen a rally here over the past few days. But the reason we can't instantly get up to that $90,000 to $100,000 level is because the vast majority of the world doesn't know about Bitcoin yet. That comes later on when we have the supply shock on the sell side. So again, markets at the end of the day, guys, are supply and demand. It is inflows and outflows of capital. And the demand from each side, in this case, the demand to buy and the demand to sell. And we can take a look here at a very, very simple model of talking about this inflows and outflows model. So again, we have really two sell side pressures. We've got general market sellers, but the vast majority of sell side pressure is from miners, people who are mining Bitcoin. Okay, so we're talking about this halving model here. As we have a reduction in the amount of Bitcoin that gets issued every day, we have a reduction in the amount of Bitcoin sell side pressure. That gets cut in half, okay? Now, we're getting these numbers just to put some context here by multiplying the current existing amount of Bitcoin that are mined every day multiplied by a fixed price, okay? So I'll be honest, I made this model back a while ago. I can't remember the exact price, but it's taking into mind here that pre-halving and post-halving, we have the same price here, give or take. And it signals here that we have a lot less Bitcoin in a dollar term being sold every day, right? Because we generally do have less Bitcoin being sold on the market because of the halving event. And either what you're going to get here is prices increasing in order to bring back the same sell side pressure, so it means higher prices, or we've got lower sell side pressure. If the buying side remains the same and likely will actually increase going into the longer term trend after the halving event as more people are aware of cryptocurrencies, right? We either way have a generally higher buy side pressure than sell side pressure. Again, this is what leads to actually about 2 to 3 months out after the halving event, the startup of the next cycle, right? And again, don't doubt that we could see this earlier. I'm just making it very clear to you guys that it tends to be, at least from the last one, that it was about 2 to 3 months. We might defy history here. We've only had 2 other previous halving events. Okay, so it's very, very important to keep that in mind. So very important, interesting topic here. I think that's what's quite fascinating, and a lot of people don't consider here. But this is how all markets work. It's inflows and outflows. Another thing as well, guys, we talked about hash rate. Guys, hash rate is doing perfectly fine. It's setting up towards relative highs here. It looks like it's almost setting up an ascending triangle here to break out further into the halving event. Right now, I'll be honest, guys. I really do think, I'm gonna play it conservative. There could be, again, that oddball scenario like we talked about in price, where we could see some major breakout in hash rate. All in all, as much as I believe we are going to see a pullback, it just kind of makes sense at this point. I don't know how a lot of miners will economically operate. The one thing I want to talk about is that, as we've discussed before, this is not going to affect Bitcoin's price. Right? The market will determine what Bitcoin's price does. Mining hash rate going down will not hamper Bitcoin's price, because in fact, if you want to take a look at it in an opposite direction, we can see that this is true. Ever since back during the highs here of the last cycle where Bitcoin was at 20,000, right, excuse me, I apologize, over here in January of 2018 or December of 2017, we have more than 10x hash rate during a bear market where Bitcoin is now down to, basically a little bit over a third of what it was back there in 2020 or 2017. So this correlation of hash rate going up and price going up and hash rate going down and price going down doesn't make sense. There's no historical evidence to prove that. Plain and simple. It is a complete FUD argument in that case. It is completely rooted in absolute speculation that a drop in hash rate is going to somehow destroy Bitcoin. Bitcoin is really not much more secure at 100, exahashes versus 50 exahashes, like where it was back here in the fall of 2018. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Don't let the fear get to you guys. Now, we are stepping very, very close to the halving event. I wanted to make this video here just to kind of summarize some of these talking points. I have no doubt we'll revisit some of them during the live stream. But for those of you who want to attend the live stream, we are going to be doing it about 30 minutes before the halving countdown. So if you want to watch this through the day, you'll know when we start the live stream, okay? I'm very, very excited to do this with you guys. And we can also know as well that we've dropped from the average block reward of 12.5 to 6.25 coins when we take a look at block explorers. We can see here that each block mentions how much a reward that it received and how much transaction volume that it did as well. So this is an example on blockchain.com. And we will see later on today, we'll be able to confirm when we hit that block number, right? The magical block number. I can get it here real quick. After every 210,000 blocks we get, in this case, we're expected to hit the Bitcoin halving event. I'm trying to remember the magical number here. But yeah, we'll basically, we can see here, well, actually, it's quite simple. So if it's every 210,000 in this case, we can add it here. So it'd be the 630,000th block. 630,000th block. Oh my gosh. Man, this is the thing, guys. I haven't been drinking coffee as of recent, so you can probably guess why I'm not as sharp as I used to be and stuff. But it's good. I've gotten away from it for a very long period of time, and I'd rather be that way and stuff, not drinking coffee. I digress. You guys have stuck around for long enough. I appreciate you joining me on this video. If you liked it, drop a like, subscribe if you haven't, and also hit the bell icon so you guys don't miss our Halving event live stream. I might even bring out the 50K subsuit for those of you who are old enough to, or old enough of fans of the channel to remember that. The wacky suit that I used to wear sometimes during my live streams. Who knows? We'll see. Anyways, I hope you're all having a fantastic day wherever you are, and I'll see you all in tonight's live stream. Take care, guys. I'll talk to you all soon.
Their spirits were sunken and low. Their bags weighed more than a ton. There was neither sign nor show when the bull began his run. The shields were shilling wall to wall. The gig was up, they had their fun, and every short got a margin call when the bull began his run. The candle's green came fast and tall. Each wick was bold, quick to stun. His eyes burned red and his horns did moan when the bull began his run. Now fortune smiles upon the need. His bags of gold gleam in the sun. The outer stream of his balanced sheet, and every bear is left with none, since the bull began his run.